webinars. Total 8 webinars we are planning, and this is the 4th in that series of webinars. World Accreditation Day is celebrated on June 9th every year. This is a global initiative established by ILAC and IAF, that is International Laboratory Accreditation Corporation and International Accreditation Forum jointly, to promote the value of accreditation. This 2021 year's theme is accreditation supporting the implementation of United Nations SDG, that is Sustainable Development Goals. This has been chosen to ensure that policymakers continue to use accreditation and quality infrastructure services to support their SDG agenda. This provides the opportunity for ILAC and IAF members to share examples with stakeholders, regulators, and consumers of how accreditation may be applied to meet objectives such as increasing trade, addressing environment and health and safety concerns, and improving the general overall quality of output in an economy. This series of sessions is organized by CCC, which is Consultants Consortium of Chennai. We are an association of management system consultants. It's a registered society under Tamil Nadu Societies Act, having office at Chennai, but having pan-India members. It's a platform for management consultants and other allied consultants. And there are sector-specific consultants with experience, skill, and competencies as a part of this team. The objectives of CCC is to focus on industry education, promoting quality as a part of national quality mission, and to promote various management system standards that are needed for the businesses across the sectors, to be the representative voice of management system consulting community. And this is the first in India to be a part of the separate society for the management system consultants, to focus on knowledge dissemination to the industry on an ongoing basis about standards, certifications, accreditations, inspections, regulations, etc. So now I hand over the session to the moderator, Mrs. Krishna Datta ma'am. The question and answer session we'll have at the end of the session. Ma'am, you can.
Good evening, everybody. And can I please get the screen sharing rights?
Yeah, you can do now. I've stopped the screen sharing. You can do now.
Good evening, everybody, and a warm welcome to everyone present here to this session on account of our World Accreditation Day celebration. So this session, we are looking at working and talking about the climate change. One of the very, very critical features that is now driving the entire world. So way back in 2006, the first interaction about the global warming came through an inconvenient truth. So that was the campaign. That was a film which was actually inspired by the campaign of Nobel laureate Al Gore about global warming. And from there on, this climate change has actually had very specific role in every meeting in every corner of the world. Today, we have the privilege of having two very eminent and inspiring speakers who themselves believe in implementing a lot of SDGs, and they have taken the time off their busy schedules, and they have chosen to be with us today. So I take this privilege of introducing Colonel Shashikant Dalvi. Colonel Shashikant Dalvi is a retired colonel, and he has served the Indian Army from 1969 till 2002. And during his work with the Indian Army, he was instrumental in actually leading the troops in the Bangladesh Liberation War. So that's a huge thing. And also he has done a lot of experiment with the machinery operating at sub-zero temperatures in higher altitudes. And of course, his work did not stop after his retirement. In post-retirement, he implemented Pune's first rooftop rainwater harvesting project in his own society, thereby making it a tanker-free society. He believes in water conservation in a big way and has established his own organization, Parajanya, which is involved in spreading this awareness. He currently volunteers with the Climate Reality Project and is a national convener for water harvesting. So without taking much time, I would invite Colonel Shashikant Dalvi to please, let us know about how the accreditation systems can actually play a huge role in meeting the SDGs. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Krishna. You can now, I want to show my slides, so I think, how do we go about it?
Yeah.
Should I share the
You can do
screen?
that, sir. You can share the screen, yeah.
Okay. How do I? What's the next step? Krishna, guide me.
So I hope you opened that file.
Yeah, I opened my file.
Yeah. So share screen, you click that share screen and then go to that window. Yeah, I think it's coming now.
Join the conversation, but where is the my slides?
I think you
got to select the window with your slides. Just select the window where your slides are.
Yeah, it is here.
Yes,
Yes,
we can
yes,
see
yeah.
that. Yes.
Can you see them?
Yes, the one that is environment sustainability and sustainable development goals.
Yeah.
The life on land.
1 minute. We have to go to the beginning.
Yes.
Sorry, friends, for because I'm not that technical savvy which you people are. Anyway, good evening once again. I'll be speaking to you initially about the briefly explain to you about the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, through the slides which has been provided to us by the Climate Reality Project that is made by the Nobel laureate Al Gore. So let us start one by one and let us see small video. Able to hear all of you?
audio is not coming, sir. Only video is running.
Audio is not coming?
Not coming, sir.
is wrong with audio?
I think it's fine. We can read whatever is.
You can read what, yeah, that's also more than enough. Well, friends, that is a very impactful, effective presentation just to show you why these goals were made, keeping what things in mind. Let us see one by one about the sustainable development. Total of 17 goals. They were set up in 2015. As a matter of fact, after the COP21, which took place in Paris in 2015, where most of the countries accepted these targets. Universality, that is a very important factor because all these goals which are there, which we'll be discussing one by one, in short, because it will take a lot of time, and specifically keeping in mind the accreditation, what role, important role which you are playing in shaping the economy and otherwise also socially and economically also. Integration, yes, all these goals are integrated to a system. Once we see 17 goals, you will find how they are connected with each one. Hopefully, on Earth. Let us take a tour of SDGs, gentlemen. Most of us are aware. I'm not saying that we are not aware of this. We are aware of these 17 goals. So we will not go here, but just rush through what all they say. Number is large, apparently it looks like, but then when we have to consider what we want to bring up, we have seen that video, then all these things are required. Probably they are shortlisted, and then that's how the number of details are very large. So let us start with social. These are the 6. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation. Friends, as far as India is concerned, 80 million people remain hungry every day. It's a huge amount, 8 crore people. So hunger, poverty, and with this pandemic, more and more people have gone into the below poverty line. Jobs lost, a number of things. We will not go into details. Again, all these 2 things are linked with good health and well-being. Quality education, are we getting? Are our students getting? If you move around in the rural areas, in this pandemic, one thing was brought out was we went into the online classes. When we went into digitization, and very good. But in the rural areas where far-flung places which are nearer to the city, yes, definitely they will have may not be 24 hours water power supply, but they will have some power supply. But I have visited certain places where 6 hours a day, mostly in the night, there is a power supply, even today. So what their children are going to do? And when we talk about 8 crore people do not have, they are hungry. That means they are below poverty line. That is 32 rupees a day earning, sustaining on that. So from where they will get a smartphone for their children. So this means when we talk about the quality education, we have to go long way. Gender equality, I will not touch much upon that. It's a very touchy subject. But yes, we have to work a lot on this, especially in India. Clean water and sanitation, a passion for me, very close to my heart, gentlemen. India is a country blessed with world average rainfall is about 850 millimeters of annual average rainfall. India receives more than 1,000 millimeters of average rainfall. But our water with us is, on the planet, there's only 1% fresh water. Though it is aqueous planet, everywhere we see the water. 97% is in ocean, 2% are in the 1% is blocked in the icy caps. Only 1% fresh water. India's share is only 4%, and our population share is 18%. So getting clean water for everyone, Niti Aayog says 600 million people, million Indians do not have access to safe drinking water and safe sanitation facilities. Imagine, right from the day 1 last year, March, when the corona struck us, India, every time we were told that yes, sanitation should be maintained. We must come, whenever we go out, come back, wash our hands, wash our clothes, do everything. For that, all things, friends, you require water. And these 60 crore peoples, these citizens are, again, your and my purpose. They're Indians. What about them? So when we have to think, when we think about this, are we getting the enough water? The topic is different. Some other time I'll discuss about that. Because you and me staying in Chennai people know. I know them, they are having a huge water problem these days. Keep a number of people there about the rainwater harvesting and water conservation. But many of us being fortunate, whether you're in Chennai or in Pune or anywhere in India, major cities, you can buy the water. You got a capacity, but not so in the rural areas, majority of them. Let us go to next. Very nice. They enjoy the life. I know there is a poverty. When we talk about poverty, it is so many people are below poverty line, which we discussed. And that is how, when you are giving the accreditation certificates, going to various places, services or uh, factories or whatever, I do not know which all places you go to give accreditation certificate. But you have to keep this particular, because there will be class for employees and their families, or there are labors on contract labors, which probably they are not, they do not have any facilities to enjoy the PPF and the medical facilities, etc. So we have to look into number of things. No poverty. So very laudably big goal, challenging goal for 136 crore population of India's population. Friends, since independence, we have increased by 100 crores. Our population then was 36 crores, today it is 137 crores. 100 crores increase, it is difficult to maintain them. Zero hunger, we have fixed a goal. And these goals, United Nations has said, should be achieved by 2030. All the developing nations or underdeveloped nations, it is going to be very difficult for them. So in between, if you remember, when the last president of United States declared in 2016, when he got elected, that 2016, yes, that we will pull out from the climate accord, which was signed in Paris, and we will not provide $100 billion funds for all these things, in everything related to climate. Actually, everything went on a slow burner. Achieving food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agricultural growth. Yeah, we have to try and do all these things wherever possible. Good health and well-being. We say that ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. 2 lakh Indians, especially the young adults or the children, die every year because of the lack of safe drinking water. And look at this particular goal, how difficult it is to achieve. Not impossible. I won't say that it is impossible. From 2015, 6 years have passed. We have got another 9 to 10 years to achieve this. Hopefully, we can do all together. Quality education. Yes, quality. I just spoke to you a few minutes back about a quality education. This pandemic brought out 2 things very clearly. One was the lack in the health infrastructure. Our primary health centers are absolutely in shambles, which I don't want to discuss because it has been every day it is discussed. And another thing was the education, especially in the rural areas. We are lucky, those who are staying in the metropolitan cities or major towns. They are lucky. They have got enough facilities to educate their children. Gender equality, yes. Even the ladies are not paid and on par with. I'm going to talk about only salary, on par with the gents. Take a sports. The Indian cricket team and the male and female. You see what they get. There were a number of articles, number of discussion on this, but still, we still go in this. No further comment on this, gentlemen. It is a touchy subject, which I had mentioned to you. Clean water and sanitation, yes. Access to water and sanitation for all. Availability of water, immediately after independence, that is 1951, when the first census took place. So we always talk about 1951 as a base year. Till then, to 2011, availability of water per Indian reduced by 70%, whooping 70%. And now it is told by Niti Aayog by 2030, the present water demand will be double than the supply. Pani kahan se aayega? There is no factory for the water. It is only almighty. We got a primary resource on this planet. Source on this planet is only one. That is a rainfall. How we use it is a different issue. So access is very important. People are doing, government is doing, climate reality project India is doing, other NGOs are doing, trying their best to help. Now I have started a project in Pune district, just launched on the 5th of June, that is the World Environment Day. We are, with the help of the ICICI Bank, CSR funds, climate reality project is doing, making 4 villages water sufficient. The work has started. The village infrastructure to be. We had done earlier also. I had done more than 100 projects in Madhya Pradesh and few in again Marathwada, the Marathwada portion of the Maharashtra. It is a very doable and economical. But that means people are doing it in their own way. But being a huge country, we're finding it difficult to keep a pace. But we are at it. Now, economic. About this goal, we have seen the social part of it. Now, let us see economic part of it. Now, once we start up economic part of it, affordable and clean energy. Right from the day we heard about the world global warming, a few decades back only, not hundreds of years back, only few decades back when we started talking about the global warming, and what came to our mind, we must use the renewable energy source. And we got 2 renewable energy sources, which are non-fatal in a sense that they are not harmful to you and me. One is solar and another wind. I'm not talking about the tidal energy, which is again just non-renewable. It's a renewable again. So it should be affordable. Over a period of last 4 to 5 decades, you have seen, you are in the industry, in a sense, you mix up with the industry. Solar power has come down. The cost of solar power has come down tremendously, especially in the battery portion of it. It's a huge drop is there. Even the solar panels, the costing has come down. So people, now it is affordable, I can say, in the cities at least, to go in for the providing clean energy, etc. But then in rural areas, in our Asian subcontinent, best example is given by Bangladesh. Some other time we'll discuss on that, or you people can find out how they have done it. Even for the thatched huts, they were able to do it. Decent work and economic growth is very important. Unfortunately, in the pandemic, the number of people who have lost job, you know it better than me, because you are working with the industry and service sector. So you know it, how people have lost the jobs. So it is easy to say such a things which we never thought of, or the like cyclones, etc. These are again natural taken place because of the global warming and climate change. Is again we have to work on that also. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure. We have to have, when we talk about the infrastructure, or when you visit the factories, etc., what you have to look into is this: are they having this renewable energy sources? Are they applying it to it? Are they doing something recycling of the or the energy conservation? Are they doing, or the STPs, ETPs, effluent treatment plants or sewage treatment plants, renewable, that is recycling of the resources time and again? Unfortunately, my reading, I may be wrong, but working on the pollution control boards of the states, various states, and of course, we find that there is some amount of laxity on that from the industry. You've got a major role to play, friends. Reduce inequalities, it has come, reducing among countries. There are poor countries, 5 fingers, we always say that they are not same, but together we can make a difference. Sustainable cities and communities. Because more than another decade's time in India also, almost 50% of the India's population stay now in the cities, because cities provide jobs, cities provide food, water, everything. So people are, I mean, it's like a magnet. We are getting attracted towards that. But is it life? Is equality, inequality is there? Whether we are having the all these things we discuss, we need to work on that. Responsible consumption and production. When we talk about consumption, every year the world's not celebrates, but calculates the what is called as overshoot day, Earth overshoot day. This year it has been calculated, and 29th July 2021 is a Earth overshoot day. Means our consumption from 1st January 2021 of the natural resources which are produced by our Mother Earth, which should last us till 31st December, will be we will be finishing it up by 29th of July. Imagine. Every year it is coming down, down, down. So it is, and it is, we know it, how much we waste. Again, not much time to discuss on this thing. Then you would say, environment. Now, when we talk about the climate action, gentlemen, the climate change is taking place. We know that. I'll give you a very simple example. I came after the 1971 operations. I came to Pune on posting to Pune. So I belong to Kolhapur in Maharashtra. I came on posting to Pune in 1972, later part of 1972. And in those days, Pune was a non-fan station. No fans available in offices, houses, or even for sale. Highest rise temperatures in the high temperatures in the summer in the month of May is to be 30 degrees centigrade barely. Today, AC is a necessity and not a luxury. So just one example, it's everywhere. I just, because I'm experiencing, that's why I told you. Otherwise, and because of the global warming, the climate is changing, friends. How the global warming is taking place, I'm not going to those slides, but all of us are aware and take it for granted. Yes, we are aware. So there is an urgent need to take action. Again, in the Conference of Parties, where the November, December 2015 in Paris, when everybody signed those documents, these were the not compulsory, but these were commitment, the individual commitment by the every nation. And that time it was planned, it was decided by the Earth's temperature. Normal temperature is 15 degrees centigrade. It should not be raised by 1.5 degrees centigrade. We must control it by all costs, so that then we can bring the climate change under the control. And now, what the latest is, by 2025, 25 years earlier, we are expected that we will cross 1.5 degrees centigrade. Presently, it is 1.13 degrees centigrade, and we are facing every year rise in intensity and frequency cyclones in East Coast and West Coast, heavy downpours. We know all the climate reality things. So, gentlemen, this is again takes our life below water. Gives 1 decade. We are very capable of achieving big laurels, and I'm sure another decade I may not be there. You will be there, and you will find less fish and more plastic and other garbage in the oceans. Because if you see the figures of the plastic and other garbage in the ocean, you will be, gentlemen, it will be amazed to see those figures. Marine resources, etc. Life on land, yes, the desertification for India. If I'll give you one figure, that the slowly and steadily, the desert is marching in India. 30% of land is now under desertification. Slowly and steadily it's going on. Land degradation taking place, deforestation, a rise in temperatures, soil is getting degraded, heavy rainfall, no forest to control, then you will find the top layer, the nutritious layer of the soil is washed away. So by biodiversity loss, etc. So All these goals have to be achieved. As to peace and justice, governance, we'll just briefly touch and then we'll go ahead. Peace, justice, and strong institution, every government tries. Every government tries. And it's a very difficult task for a country like India, where the poverty is on rise, our weather pattern, the climate is absolutely different from different part of the northeast, north. I have moved around most of the part of the country. So I know different type of topography, different type of climate, and then of course peaceful and inclusive societies. Less said, the better. Revitalization Global Sustainable Development. Partnership, gentlemen, for the goals. Everyone, every individual, we have to come. We have to contribute our own way, whatever minuscule way we can, but we have to do it. Then these are the 17 goals which are important. Let us see further slides so that global goals. Well, gentlemen, we have just touched upon this. I am rushing through in a sense that half an hour almost is the time to be. So I hope I have kept it in the mind and then touched upon this. And your role, what role you are going to play in this, probably I'll discuss it in Q&A session so that next speakers can also will have a time to discuss their own things. Thank you, friends, for giving me a patience listening, and we can definitely discuss it, every goal and your role which we can play. Thank you and God bless.
So we could actually discuss about the clean water SDG a little more, since you have been working on this for a long time. So it would be great if you can throw some light on the clean water availability and the rainwater harvesting.
Okay,
so
no problem, Krishna.
Half an hour on that now.
Absolutely no problem. I'll take a few minutes so that we can go ahead also. As far as the I mentioned to you, availability is very less. It is reducing day by day. Why it is reducing? 80% of our surface water, that means all our rivers, lakes, surface water we can see with our naked eyes. They are highly polluted. When it comes to pollution, now it comes your role. STPs, ETPs, untreated, the sewage or untreated effluent is left into the water bodies. I'll give you an example of Pune. Pune city has got 60 lakh population, 6 million population. Almost 60% is only the domestic sewage is only treated 60%. 40% untreated is left into the. Because here is what happens like a chore police. The population is rising and the infrastructure is not keeping a pace. What infrastructure? That is the effluent treatment plants. STPs of the Pune Municipal Corporation has to keep a pace. And if it is not keeping a pace naturally, it is not possible. So this is how it goes, and you'll find all our rivers and lakes and the industry, again, small industries. There was an article about few years back, 10, 12 years back in Maharashtra. MPCB has said that we want not volunteers, we want people who will pay them to go to small scale industries and check from there whether they are, and the medium scale industry to check their effluent treatment plants are working properly. And that their effluents are untreated, if effluents are not left into the water bodies, natural water bodies. I don't know what happened to that, whether they got the people, they paid or not, it's a different issue. Same thing happens with agriculture. We still depend heavily on the chemicals, that is fertilizers, as well as the pesticide. Rainy season, monsoon, it is used rapidly. So the runoff from the fields goes into the water bodies. again it's polluted. That is how it is polluted. You and me are supplied with 135 liters minimum. If the city has got enough water, then 150. But I haven't seen any city supplying more than 150 liters of water per day per person. But definitely 135. In that 135 liters per day per person, two components, friends. 40 liters for the washing, that washing utensils, washing or clothes, etc. Is per day per person is 40 liters, and 25 liters is for taking a bath. About out of this 135 liters. Now, this is, are we using that water? This is what we call it the gray water. We have to now need arises that this gray water should be treated and recycled. Reuse for, if we are talking about the housing societies, then it should be used for the flushing, for gardening, for cleaning of the vehicles. Same thing in the industry. These effluent treatment plants, there they can, and the water can be retreated. That is recycled again for the industrial purpose. So that the main natural resource which is available and which is depleting, which I mentioned to you, can be used properly. You know, the once I mentioned to you about the groundwater, the rainwater, then I told about surface water, which is polluted. Next is groundwater. Water is the Mother Nature's fixed deposit for all the flora, fauna, all animals, including human as an animal, for them. And every year during the monsoon, Mother Nature does the recurring deposit. It adds into that in the form of the percolation of the rainwater, which goes down, and the water table rises. This is one side of a story. Now, Niti Aayog 2 years back said 21 cities have got a zero groundwater status. I have visited Chennai, then Bangalore, and then Hyderabad, Lucknow, where the water table is beyond 1500 feet. Imagine the energy required to pump that water against the gravity. So your groundwater table is depleting very rapidly. And unless we take every drop of rainwater is collected from our rooftop or from the roadside through the storm waters and channelized into the groundwater to raise the groundwater table using all the types of rainwater system. I use rooftop rainwater harvesting system because it is cleaner. Your rooftops are mostly clean. Maybe what may be there is the twigs, leaves, bird droppings. Nothing beyond that. Nobody keeps chemicals and dirt in the top of the rooftops or in the villages, the slanting roofs, caparel roofs, and all those. Nothing. So it is easier to filter them and use them. Because this is my experience since 2003 when I made my first project, and it increases rapidly. You'll be surprised to note that when I was made a chairman of the society, our borewell used to give only one borewell. It used to give half an hour a day yield, and water table at 225 feet. When I did the rainwater harvesting with our committee, with the help of the committee, then the 9 lakh liter water from the 12,000 12,000 square feet of rooftop our society every year now goes into our borewell, directly injected into the borewell. Our water table has risen to 60 feet now, and the same tube well gives us 9 to 10 hours continuously water supply. So that is how I decided, if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. That's how I started my journey. Gentlemen, it is doable, economical, I think, because I have worked in 6 states in both rural and urban sector. It is very much doable. Industry is not giving much attention to it. So as an accrediting specialist, certificate givers that go to the SDG 6, where they said clean water and sanitation. Now here you can say that yes, you must use the rain. And mind you, every state has got the rules for the rooftop rainwater harvest system, mandatory for public and government buildings. So definitely we can, you can definitely do these things. I think, if I go in details, further details, I don't think I'll be doing a justice to other speakers also. But in question and answers, Krishna, I can definitely speak to others also. Means whatever questions they have got, any related question, I'm willing to take it up.
Sure. So we will go to the question answer sessions after we have the second speaker as well. So thank you so much. It was very enriching, and of course, knowing why the SDGs were established itself is a big story, and that is an eye-opener. So thank you so much. We'll discuss more about this after we've heard our second speaker as well. So I would like to now invite Shri Vinay Deodhar to share his experience with us, especially about his interactions with the in the Paris Agreement. So just to let you know a little about Shri Vinay Deodhar, he is a chemical engineer from IIT Mumbai and holds an MBA degree from the Mumbai University. He has 38 years long experience in the industry, in the banking sector, as well as in the consulting. He is currently providing technical support as a senior climate change specialist to the operations department at Asian Development Bank. And he is also a steering committee member for the Global Carbon Council, Qatar. So welcome, sir. We are all looking forward to hearing from you. And we would like to know your experiences. We would like you to share with all of us, about what's really happening in the Paris Agreement and what are we doing about the commitments and the goals that we have set for ourselves. So please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Krishna. And it's a very, I really thanks to the Chennai Consultants Consortium for giving me this opportunity to speak to you about, Paris Agreement and what are the commitments under that and how the agreement is poised to change the situation as far as climate change is going. So let me briefly, give a presentation first on the climate change and then on the Paris Agreement. I'll just share my screen. Can you see my screen, please? Hello?
No, sir, no.
No, we can't. No, not visible.
Oh, sorry. Just a minute. Can you see it now, please?
Yeah.
Yes, it is visible now.
Just, yeah. Yeah, okay. I hope you can see the screen now. Briefly about my organization. I have a small consulting organization called Clean Tech Solutions. Basically, we specialize in cleaner techno-commercial solution, and our thrust is basically on implementable, effective, affordable solutions, and which can be converted into bankable projects. We cover cleaner production technologies, clean energy project, waste to energy, waste management, carbon finance, and development of ISO 14000 and 50001 compliant systems. We provide solid waste and wastewater treatment and energy generation technologies. And our forte is basically climate finance solutions. You can get more information from our website, ctsindia.net. So right immediately jumping into the what is the background and what is the genesis of Paris Agreement? Basically, Paris Agreement is fallout of climate discussions on climate change in the global arena. The basic reason for this is the rising in carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, and we all learned in the school that before pre-industrial levels, it was around 250 ppm, and today we stand at 420 ppm, the bad number 420 ppm, and this is very closely linked to the temperature rise, global surface temperature of the Earth, average global temperature. If you see the graphs, both the graphs are really congruent, and as the CO2 level has started increasing, the level of the temperature has risen. And the world, in fact, interacted, and world started taking cognizance, basically starting with the first World Climate Conference, which was held in 1979 in Sweden. Thereafter, number of intergovernmental and conferences at international level on climate change were held in 80s and 90s. In 1990, the first time the group called Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a research body of now more than 3,000 scientists, was formed, which are coming from all over the world. In 1994, the convention, when UN Framework Convention on Climate Change was signed, at that time was 154 states at the Earth Summit in Rio. It's very famously held meeting. At that time, both developed and developing countries accepted a number of general commitments, basically. And one very important principle was adopted because of the the reason for climate change and the level of greenhouse gases in the climate was accredited to the industrial revolution, and which primarily happened in the developed countries. So the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, CBDR, was generally accepted. The negotiations continued further, and the IPCC prepared a very detailed assessment reports. Second one was in 95 and third report in early 2001. And all the reports progressively have been raising the concerns about the rising level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and how it is affecting the temperature on the Earth as well as the overall climate system. The convention also established their subsidiary bodies called SBSTA and SBI, one for the scientific and technological advice, and the other one was for implementing the climate convention. Then a supreme body, which is called Conference of Parties. So each country who's signatory to this convention is referred to as a party. And the Conference of Parties is being meeting every year since the first meeting. And they are called COP meetings. And this year, actually last year it was supposed to be held in Glasgow in UK, COP21, which was postponed because of the pandemic. This year it was signed, and COP26 basically. The two important COPs in the negotiations were COP3 in 1997, which is famous for the Kyoto Protocol, and the COP21, which was held in Paris for Paris Agreement. Let me just briefly run through the Kyoto Protocol, because we will try to build a background for Paris Agreement. Kyoto Protocol was the first time the force of markets was, thought that it will take care of the, problem of climate change, and principle of cap and trade market mechanism was applied. The basic tenet of this is that you put a upper limit on the emissions by industrialized nations and allow them to invest in the offsets elsewhere. So they do action at their home, as well as they are allowed to purchase offsets from the other countries. We do not have the commitments. So the target was target was fixed based on the IPCC reports that the greenhouse gas emission levels have to be brought down 5.2% below the levels in 1990. And this in the period of what's called as commitment period. First commitment period was 2008 to 2012. This was originally what was thought. And this Kyoto Protocol was for the first legally binding quantified emission limitation reduction commitments were fixed for the industrial nations, 38 industrialized nations. And also there were 3 flexible mechanisms were established. They were called joint implementation, international emission trading, and the famous clean development mechanism, CDM. The first one, the joint implementation mechanism, was between the 2 countries which are based in industrialized nations, which was called as Annex 1 countries. And the joint implementation was to transfer the emission credits. If the country has done more, then they get credit which can be transferred to the other countries. In case of CDM, which India as a beneficiary of that, projects done in developing countries can gain emission reduction credits, and which can be purchased by the richer countries or the industrialized countries to meet their requirements. So this was a basic idea under the Kyoto Protocol. Now let's see what was the progress and how it was, what it achieved. Under the CDM, there were something 1,854 projects and 349 program of activities were registered, and a total CER. CER is a certified emission reduction, which is nothing but a ton of CO2 equivalent. Where 2.132 billion CERs were issued for these projects. Not all the projects, but some of the projects which were implemented and monitored. Then the other mechanism which I mentioned, joint implementation, there were something like 648 projects, and their unit is called ERU, Emission Reduction Unit, which is nothing also but ton of CO2. 872 million were issued, credit like that. Now, what are the salient features of the achievement? First time emission reduction was monetized, and a trading unit, which was testing of market was done under the Kyoto Protocol. It built an elaborate system of identifying, quantifying emission reductions from almost like 15 diverse sectors. It developed sound methodologies to identify baselines in different categories and project sizes. As of now, as of today, there are around 220 methodologies, which was approved by the executive board under the CDM. They developed monitoring reporting and verification protocol. This is very important for the accreditation experts. And you will all realize that MRV is a very important document, and MRV based on the standard, accreditation standard, which is very important to monitor. It has built a mammoth electronic registry of carbon credits. It developed a large cadre of experts. They involve desk reviewers, assessors, accredited entities, and whatnot, consultants. And I'm sure many of you also have worked under CDM projects. The other benefit fallout of this was catalyze several other emission trading programs. Basically, the EU ETS, which is still functioning and vibrantly, mechanism which is functioning among the EU countries, 21 EU countries. Then there was a gold standard, which is also functional. Then voluntary credits by Vera, Climate Action Reserve, which is in California. Although US is not part of the Kyoto Protocol, there are several agencies in US who are very active, and one of them is the Climate Action Reserve, which is based in California. Then there is a Japanese JCM, Joint Crediting Mechanism, formed by Japan. and very recently, Global Carbon Council, which is based in Gulf countries, but it's actually a global program which is generating carbon credits. I've been involved in the process of CDM very closely. I've been a part of the registration issuance team, and personally, I have evaluated more than 400 submissions under CDM. And India has immensely benefited from this, more or less like more than 1,500 projects and POAs, program of activities, have been registered from India, and it has taken a lot of effort. But what were the limitations? What were the what are the criticism of Kyoto Protocol? See, basically, right at the beginning, the market size of the Kyoto Protocol, which was thought to be very large, was drastically shrank. As the US, which was almost 24% emission percentage from US, they walked out of Kyoto Protocol when the Bush administration decided to pull out of Kyoto Protocol. And so 24% emission reductions went out of the market. Then there is another concept called additionality, which is a very challenging concept for proving the additionality of a project, because you have to protect the integrity of the CDM. The additionality of a project was very crucial. There is a criticism that many of the registered projects have doubtful additionality, because they could have happened without CDM benefit also. It's what the criticism is. Then there are several unilateral CDM projects. See, basically, CDM and JI, they were thought to be cooperative mechanism, but the crucial cooperation was missing. And almost like 1765 out of India, 1765 projects, only 610 were bilateral. The others were all unilateral. That means they did not have any buyer, or they did not have any purchase agreement with the buyers. That means the CERs which they generated cannot be sold to anybody. The other problem was JI. As you noticed, the JI projects were not many, and they were saddled with a new low offtake. Many buyers from EU and Japan, because EU and Japan were the only two major buyers of CERs from the developing countries, they ultimately lost interest due to the absence of buyers from other geographies like US, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. They were, very, very paltry amount of CERs that they purchased. And it all resulted into a lower price of CERs in comparison with the EUAs, because the EU country also perceived the quality of the CDM project not at par with the EU projects. So these were the major criticisms. And other thing is that because Kyoto Protocol was mandatory on the developed countries, there was a grudge among the developed countries, especially regarding the larger developing countries like India, China. They were already emitting much more than what they were doing in 1990. So how there was a transition from Kyoto Protocol to Paris Agreement. Kyoto Protocol first commitment period was from 2008 to 2012, which was really, I would call it as an enthusiasm period. And the second period, 2013 to 18, there were a lot of disappointments, as I mentioned, among the buyers. And Annex 1 nation demanded, they demanded a level playing field, especially because the large developing countries growing emission footprint. Feeling that every country needs to do their bit in controlling emissions and reducing the emission load in the climate. So there was a gradual shift from CBDR to CBDR plus respective capabilities. That means in light of different national circumstances. The developing countries, however, kept on demanding financial support, because many, at least the least developed countries, where the development and the GDPs are really, really poor. So they want money more for doing the projects. And at the tune of almost $100 billion per year was demanded to meet their ambitions. So I will come to the Paris Agreement. As the earlier speaker also mentioned, COP21 was held in 2015 in Paris. It is also a legally binding international treaty on climate change and climate arena. It is adopted by 196 parties out of 197. I think it was adopted at COP21 in Paris on 12th December 2015, and it entered into the force on 4th November 2016 after ratifying by 55 parties contributing to 55% global emissions. This is a standard requirement under the UN framework. The goal is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees and pursuing efforts to below 1.5 degrees compared to the pre-industrial levels. This is a very ambitious target. Although the numbers seems very, very small, but they mean a lot. And I'll come to that, how, what is the significance of these numbers. It has been, the Paris Agreement has been a landmark because between 2012 and 2015, a lot of international politics was playing around. And if people remember, the COP, which was held in Copenhagen, was really a failure, and it did not achieve what the Paris wanted to achieve. Ultimately, after this, after 197 of the 197 parties, 191 have ratified the protocol, which means that they have decided and they agreed, their countries have accepted the requirements. What are the salient features of the Paris Agreement? Paris Agreement is initially, they were asked, all the parties were asked to submit their intended nationally determined contributions to be submitted before the next COP, that was COP22 in November 2016. Basically, the difference between Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement was nothing was pushed, it's on the top down, it was bottoms up approach. That means every country has to contribute, and therefore they were asked to give what they can do, what they are capable of doing based on their national circumstances. The parties are to submit their NDCs, nationally determined contributions, every 5 years, according to the articles. In the bracket, I mentioned the articles. In NDCs, countries have to communicate their actions to reduce GHG emissions to reach the goal of Paris Agreement and build resilience to adapt. So both mitigation and adaptation, they are very important for climate change. The successive NDCs have to be fair and ambitious. That means you have to improve. Suppose earlier you said 35% reduction, next time you should say 45% or more than 35%. This is the intent of Paris Agreement. And parties have to communicate by 2020 to the Secretariat what is called a mid-century long-term low GHG emission development strategies in accordance with the Article 4. That means what do they propose to do to cut down on emissions by adopting low carbon technologies, which means renewable energy or waste management, waste to energy, and reducing the emissions in somehow. So these are the technology targets, and the countries have to submit their strategies. And PA, the difference is that the parties are to decide their approach and the extent of reducing emissions, hoping to reach the temperature reduction goals. So it's like a cooperative approach and a coordinated approach to reach the goal. The Paris Agreement provides a framework for financial, technical, and capacity building of support. The developed countries have to provide, are expected to provide the climate finance to less endowed and vulnerable countries. It establishes a technology framework for realizing the technology development and transfer and mitigation of the improving resilience, because resilience is also very important to communities. It places a greater emphasis on climate-related capacity building for developing countries, because although India has developed a lot of capability in terms of addressing the climate change, but there are smaller countries, especially the small island countries in Pacific or Atlantic, they don't have that kind of capabilities. So it is expected that the developed countries have to transfer their knowledge to them. The responsibility is all on all parties, but it is differentiated responsibilities based on their capabilities. So developed countries are expected to give economy-wide absolute emission reduction targets, and developing countries have to enhance their mitigation reports and move over time towards the economy-wide emission reduction and limitation targets. So the one of the crucial, provision under the Paris Agreement is the Sustainability Development Mechanism, which is specified in Article 4, especially this paragraph 4 of the Article 6, which is actually very close to clean development mechanism applicable to all countries. It actually is supposed to promote mitigation of GHG emissions while fostering sustainable development. So this is a linkage between Paris Agreement and SDGs. The mechanism is expected to incentivize and facilitate participation in the mitigation of GHG emissions authorized by a party. It is actually supposed to contribute to a reduction of emission levels in the host party. Host means the party which is hosting a project under SDM, resulting in emission reductions that can also be used by another party to fulfill their NDCs and deliver an overall mitigation in global emissions. There is a striking similarities between CDM and the SDM, except that it is open to all parties and it is voluntary. It is not a mandatory, unlike KP, Kyoto Protocol. The modalities and procedures of the SDM will be decided by the supervisory body designated by the Conference of Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties of the Paris Agreement. In fact, this is what was supposed to happen at the COP26 last year, but the pandemic has delayed this action, and now it will be taking place in Glasgow this year in November. Then the difference between Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement is the non-market approaches. Basically, Paris Agreement also encourages non-market approaches, this is really an innovation under the Paris Agreement. It is actually supposed to be integrated, holistic, and balanced non-market approaches available to parties to assist in the implementation of NDCs. Basically, it is to assess them in implementing their NDCs in the context of sustainable development and poverty eradication. Again, SDG 1, as referred by Colonel Dalvi. Available to parties through mitigation, adaptation, finance, technology transfer, and capacity building. The NMAs, they are aiming to promote mitigation adaptation ambition. They enhance public-private sector participation in implementation of the NDCs and enable opportunities for coordination across instruments and relevant institutional arrangements. So basically, these are opportunities for parties to think innovatively. We could immediately think about some examples of NMAs, like it could be taxes or cess on emission-intensive goods and services, or green buildings, which is a mechanism which is outside still in the market arena, and concessions in taxes and duties on low or no emission goods and services. In fact, we already are giving this kind of benefits on property taxes for like individuals or the communities who are treating their waste or putting up solar power plants in their colonies and all that. So this can be covered under the non-market approaches under the Paris. Then there is a special article for adaptation, because adaptation is equally important, and as the effects of climate change are showing up in the world, adaptation is going to be very, very crucial, building resilience basically. So the Paris Agreement lays equal stress on adaptation by establishing a global goal on adaptation of enhancing adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience, reducing vulnerabilities. Adaptation action to follow a country-driven, gender-responsive and participatory and fully transparent approach. So again, the gender-responsive refers to the SDG, which is taking care of the genders. It seeks to international cooperation on adaptation efforts considering vulnerable developing countries. It encourages specialized UN organizations and agencies to support efforts of parties to implement the adaptation actions. These are like UNDP, UNIDO, and you name what, there are several UN agencies which are helping already and in this kind of improving adaptation efforts. Each party has to submit and update periodically their adaptation communication, including its priorities, implementation, support needs, and plans. and it has to be a continuous and enhanced international support to be provided by the developed country parties. The Paris Agreement is another important feature of Paris Agreement is loss and damage, because as you know, the disaster management, we are doing a lot, and under the disaster management, natural disasters are striking the earth very, very frequently now. The Paris Agreement recognizes the importance of averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage associated with the adverse effects of climate change. Parties to enhance understanding, action, and support, including the Warsaw International Mechanism, which it was another mechanism which was developed at Warsaw under the Conference of Parties. Areas of cooperation include like major areas like early warning systems, emergency preparedness, slow onset events, events that may involve irreversible permanent loss and damage, comprehensive risk assessment, management, risk insurance, and non-economic losses, which are affecting communities, and resilience of communities. So if people who have worked in the disaster management would realize how important these aspects are to build, and all of this, because there is an international transfer of knowledge as well as finance, the Paris Agreement is going to help in future to build resilience against the disaster also. There are financial mechanisms already under the UNFCCC, like the GEF, GCF, LDCF, etc. The developed parties have to provide financial resources. Although the figure of $100 billion is not really put in because of political reasons, but this is what is intended. The developed country parties have to bring in resources in some form or the other. They have to scale up the financial resources with an aim to achieving balance between adaptation and mitigation, and taking into account the country-driven strategies. And institutions that are serving the Paris Agreement, there are, these institutions have to ensure efficient process of financial resource through simplified approval procedures. The GCF has already started doing it. In the markup to the COP21, a collective quantified goal was set of 100 billion. Of course, it has not been reached yet, not materialized yet. The other important provision under this is, as I've been mentioning, is the technology development transfer. Parties to strengthen their cooperative action on technology development. There is a mechanism under the convention which will be enhanced to transfer technologies. The PA establishes technology framework to provide guidance and facilitating technology development, technology financial support to be provided to developing parties. A capacity building support will be provided to least developed countries or small island development states, and taking effective climate change action, implementing adaptation, and facilitating technology development, dissemination, deployment, and access to climate finance, etc., etc. There is a transparency framework, so whatever is being done has to be reported and in transparent manner. Each party has to regularly provide the information about their inventory, national inventories, anthropogenic emissions, the information necessary to track progress made in the implementation of the Paris Agreement, and the developed country parties to provide information on technology transfer, capacity building support to developing parties. And they have to, these reports which are submitted will be reviewed by technical experts. The Paris Agreement provides for a global stocktake. So it is not like, it's not like one-time measure. It will be closely monitored, and the stock taking will be taken at regular, intervals. The first one is supposed to happen from this year to 2023, and every 5 years thereafter. So the global stock has to assess the collective progress on mitigation, adaptation, and finance and all that. Consider the efforts of social and economic consequences of response measures, and averting and minimizing, addressing loss and damage, and the outcomes of GST to inform countries on updating, enhancing their climate actions. There is a mechanism which is specified in the Article 15, how Paris Agreement will be implemented, and there will be a committee which will be formed. All this is going to happen this year or the next year. In fact, as we are speaking now, the meeting of SBSTA and SBI are in progress. online this time. They are not meeting in person, but they are taking it online. And these bodies are deciding about these mechanisms. And there is a sustainable development focus. I have already listed this. The PA is in sync with SDGs, in particular, goal number 1, goal number 7, clean energy, 11, sustainable cities, responsible consumption, and climate action. SDM and NMH in Article 6.8 both focus on sustainable development. The parties NDCs are expected to aim at facilitating SG sustainable development, emphasize equitable access to sustainable development and poverty, and removal of poverty, eradication, aims to strengthen global response to the threat of climate change and technology mechanism under Article 10. So the intentions are all good, but in what is there in reality? So let's come to the reality part of it. And as you know, Paris Agreement, the COP21 itself had asked about synthesizing information submitted by countries in their INDCs, and a synthesis was done by UNFCCC Secretariat. And it was found that out of these 48 NDCs, new or updated entities, which are representing 75 parties, these were submitted up to the last year, end of the last year. They account for 40% of the parties to the PA and about 30% of the global GHG emissions, which were there in 2017, which is about 99.2% of countries' emissions covered. The synthesis report suggests that 75 parties 2030 emissions would be only 7% below 1990 level. Whereas IPCC special report, IPCC was also asked to give a special report what needs to be done if the temperature has to be controlled to 1.5 degrees. They had suggested that in order to reach that goal, that emission need to decline by 45% below 2010 level in 2030, which is 2030 is just hardly 9 years from now. And so if it was to be reached by 2050, then the emissions have to reduce by 45%, which is only 7% of 1990 levels, which is 1990 levels are a little bit higher than 2010 levels. Then IPCC report, so therefore that one can conclude that estimated emission reductions from implementation is very, very, very low and falls short of what is required. And there are, of course, there are key issues, political issues, because these conference of party meetings are nothing but international politics. So the developed countries have not made their commitment to provide $100 billion, and this is a major stumbling block, so to say. The Article 4.19 invited countries by 2020 to formulate long-term low greenhouse gas development strategies. That was to be submitted last year, but as of now, only 29 countries have done so far out of 191 signatories. The negotiations of CDM, they are held up. They are not taking place. They have not taken place so far, even after 5 years of negotiations, or let's say 4 years of negotiation. And there are again stumbling blocks because there are resistance for provisions which were there in CDM. Many countries NDC suggest crucial steps to be conditional. They were given option. What will they do on their own? What will be conditional on receiving international finance? And it has been noticed that most of the crucial requirements are based on conditionalities that receiving the funding will be there, then only they will be implemented. And additional challenges are posed by COVID-19 pandemic. So all this, let's see how things move, and we are at a very crucial juncture as far as climate negotiations are concerned. So all hopes are there on this year's COP and next or 2 or 3 years. While that is happening on the negotiations, there are already some global markets, carbon markets, and countries and private companies and private sector has taken their, they have realized that there are threats of climate. So there are already, there are some carbon markets which have come into, as I mentioned earlier also, First was introduced under the Kyoto Protocol. Instruments like CR, ERU were issued, and EU ETS is very buoyantly, a market which is taking place among the European Union. There are voluntary emission trading programs which are functional. The examples are Gold Standard, Vera, Climate Action Reserve, Global Carbon Council, and ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, has got a major program called CORSIA, which is to make the international airlines to purchase climate change and credits or do actions which will control the climate change. And there is also the Joint Crediting Mechanism of Japan. So these programs are functional and have rules similar, more or less similar to CDM, plus minus 5%, you can say. And they're also additional, they also give additional credit. So there is a lot of scope for consultants to work on projects under these programs. They purchase credits from all over the world. And I really encourage all the consultants, your members of the consortium, to really look into opportunities under these various programs. So there are additional labels which are given by some of these programs, with something like environmental no net harm label under the GCC, or social no net harm label, or in the Vera there is SD Vista, Sustainable Development, and also social carbon. And there are several others, but they are too complicated to mention in such a presentation. So these are already there. And what happens is that the projects which are getting credits under these labels, and they give something like gold, platinum, copper, and all those categories are there, and they can get additional value, and the price of their credits may be higher as compared to the others without such labels. So these are the examples of such labels, and you can even go into this. With this, I will stop at this place, and we'll have to leave a lot of time for question answers. I'm sure a lot of questions will be there in all the attendees, and I really would like to take some time to also give the questions. So thank you very much for the opportunity once again. And I hope, I'm sorry to have rushed through the presentation in order to cover the entire gamut of the issues which are there in the Paris Agreement. And whatever are the issues that you have questions in the mind, I will be very glad to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for this lovely presentation. I mean, a lot of information about what ought to be done and what levels of commitments it takes to actually meet these requirements. So I would also request Colonel Dalvi to be there so that I can you please start your video, sir? Yeah, thank you so much. In fact, in both the presentations that we saw today, a lot of input for how to accomplish the SDGs definitely is there. In fact, what I could really decipher from this is that there is also an opportunity and also an effort being made at designing the roadmap, at accomplishing the SDGs. So I would really like to ask Colonel Dalvi, sir, how do you think, what could be the measures wherein we always say that everyone should play their role and be a part of it? So what would you like to say to everyone? Like, how can everyone contribute? What can they do? Like, especially as a accreditation body, as consultants, as certification bodies, what can they do from their end to ensure that, we meet the objectives?
Well, Krishna, which I mentioned during my presentation, partly, not fully, was when we look at the SDGs, the 17 goals, and each goal, which was, of course, it was difficult. Like Deodhar Saab also said, it's very difficult to explain all these things in the presentation of a short time. But briefly touching upon is a very important aspect of it. Well, most of us you must be knowing. Because when you go there, what I have mentioned, whether it's a food wastage, whether it is water wastage, uh, energy conservation, everything, you look at it and you will find this in the part of your audit must be looking at energy conservation, must be looking at what efforts you have made. I haven't seen the form as it, but what efforts the industry has made to switch over to renewable energy sources. What efforts that industry or the organization, wherever you are going, made an efforts to recycle and reuse, whether it's energy, whether it is the effluents or any other resource which is there. Whatever, they must be making it, but are they known? And if at all they are known, are they published within your circle, within your field where you people are there, your CCC? Definitely, I'm not saying that they are not doing it. They must be doing it. So if they are doing this, then they must audit it. This is from audit of your own audit. That if I had told this particular organization or industry to do this, what net result by the time I went to the same or my colleague went to the same organization next year, and what has happened? Has it made any difference? Why we are talking is after me the Devdar Sahab also pointed out the same thing. The time duration now is, every date is becoming very important. How to achieve this? 2025, 2030. I don't go beyond that because I don't know. Even if it is rises by 1.5 degrees centigrade, there is no mathematical model available. When it reaches 1.5, hopefully shouldn't, but if it reaches 1.5 by 2025, what extreme climatic events are going to take place? Like I mentioned to you, with 1.13 degrees rise in temperature now, the ocean water temperatures are so high now that we are getting the cyclones. I'm not talking about the monsoon cycle and the climate, the effect on our water resources, but these cyclones which are generated all over the oceans, wherever they're coming in, they're rising in frequency, rising in intensity, causing huge damage. We have seen this now. Last 2 years, we have seen what Totke has caused the damage, or Yas has caused the damage, or last year it was Amphan and the Nisarg. You go on backpack and you'll find everything is huge damaging. So what I'm coming at is, unless and until the industry, you from your accreditation society side, you say why you have not able to, because boon boon se sagar banta, drop makes the ocean. If you say yes, your industry or your organization has reduced the carbon emission by so much by adopting to newer practices, and if you are able to say that, that is the important crux of it. Whether it is any recycle, whether it's a conservation of energy or the effluent recycling, the water supplied once. I was reading about one German industry. They were using the water supplied by the corporation, local body corporation there, 8 times. I want to see in India, there may be, I don't know, but not to my knowledge, where they are using it more number of times. The more number of times you use means the consumption or the water which is there. Ultimately we have got a fixed amount of water which is available. How we use it is up to us. If you want to examine, completely get rid of it, and then we found what happened in the South Africa, or other, now we are facing in Bangalore or Chennai or other 21 cities which the Niti Aayog has said. Let us not reach that particular stage. So you can do it. I'm sure about it. I'm touching upon very briefly about 4, but Krishna, I'm sure about it. We'll be able to make a difference. That's what I personally feel.
Thank you so much, sir. Shri Devdhar, I would really like to, ask you, like when we talk about the Paris Agreement, and today we saw that there are so many things that are being talked about, and the commitments are there. There are different kinds of certifications, but the awareness about them is very limited as on date. So, what are the different mechanisms in which we can actually enroll people to participate in these kind of certification activities, and definitely educate them about why they are needed? What is your take on that? We would really like to know a little more about it. So you can unmute yourself, please.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you very much. I think accreditation is going to be very crucial. A review of whatever is being done. So certifying that is very important, and independence in that certification is going to improve the value of that credit. So as we realize, the mechanism under the CDM was very elaborate, and the MRV, which I mentioned earlier, the MRV is very, very crucial to, the project has to be implemented in the way it was supposed to be, and then it has to be certified by an independent auditor, an independent entity, so that, the world will believe it. Otherwise, why the buyer from another country will believe that this project was done in the fashion it was expected to be done? So in this case, it is very important. And many a times I have seen in my practice, people don't realize the importance of, following the procedures which are involved. Take a small example of maintaining the instruments in a factory. If they are not maintained by, as per the standards, then the readings will be erroneous, which will give you erroneous results, and your credit will be questionable. So suppose you are going to claim something, you have to be sure about what you are really going to sell. Any item or commodity or service that you're going to sell has to be really perceived as a good value service. So is the case in the climate change, and especially when the market mechanisms are being talked about to address. In this case, Paris case, it lays equal stress on market mechanism and non-market mechanisms. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of scope for consultants to think innovatively and identify mechanisms which they can pass as non-market mechanisms, which are ultimately resulting into emission reductions and go into the enhancement of the goal of the meeting the goal of the Paris Agreement. So there is definitely a scope in that, and whatever actions that government was doing already now will be put into the non-market mechanism approach. I'm sure about that. As the negotiations will progress, you will see that the effects like the practices like green buildings, for example, we are doing green buildings, but without realizing that we are helping the climate. So that will be put under the non-market mechanism, which is very logical, and they really achieving that goal in a way. And because Paris Agreement also lays stress on sustainable development, it is not necessarily only the emission reductions per se. It's going to be how much poverty was reduced, how much help was given to the like gender equality, and so all these factors will start coming in. And if you realize the multilateral institutions like multilateral development banks, World Bank, ADB or AFDB, they are already considering for last about 10 years equal importance on sustainable development. And so, all in concerned stakeholders should start thinking in that fashion, which will help them in the long run.
Okay. So one of the things that I get from this discussion is that we will also have to raise our competencies to actually understand these requirements and then also implement them effectively. Now, which you mentioned, a small thing like calibrating equipment not being in calibration, not being maintained. that can make such a huge difference, wherein the credibility of the organization itself is in question. So if we look at each particular aspect of our certifications or our accreditations, every aspect will need to be dealt with very, very seriously and meticulously. Unless we really do that, this is very difficult to actually address. And also, as far as these certifications that we saw, are they available in India? I mean, can Indian organizations apply for these kind of certifications by Vera and
Yes, yes, very much, very much. Yes, yes. In fact,
Okay.
yeah. If you see, most of them either trace ISO 14064.
Mhm.
There are different certifications, their own certifications, and you can get registered as as a verifying agency with these programs. They have very well established registries, carbon registries, and also registries for approval procedures for accreditation. They will have their own accreditation standards, like CDM had accreditation standard.
Yes.
They have similar standards of registering both. Some of the programs, in fact, GCC, which I am involved in, that we have both. Individuals can get registered as assessors as well as entities can do. But there are certain limitations. Of course, individuals cannot do projects of higher size, larger size. But then they can still do smaller projects. They can really get as a accreditation as an assessor under that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, one more thing that crosses my mind at this time is like we are looking at certification and accreditation, but also there appears to be a bigger need to motivate and inspire the next generation into these activities.
Right.
Like especially when we are seeing that for the last 1 year, the children are not going to school. So they are not going to colleges. So definitely they have already gone behind by 5 years, I guess. But at least if we keep them, motivated with talks about environment, with the talks about our sustainable development goals, I'm sure they will have better ideas on how to implement them. They are much more creative than us. Maybe the way forward could be to include them in these agreements, include them in these activities. I don't know. This is just a wild thought that came across to me right now when I was listening to both of you. I would like to know your views on this also. Like, how can we involve the next generation in this work?
Yeah, Colonel sir, I think you would like to take it first. I will.
Yeah. No problem. On the 5th of June, we celebrated World Environment Day.
Yes.
Theme was restore the ecology. And the United Nations gave time was 10 years. Now, 10 years to restore the ecosystem, which has been badly damaged by us. Biodiversity, part of the ecosystem is again, we know how many plants or flora, fauna is now becoming extinct.
Yes.
So now is the right time to spread the awareness to the students. But for that, we have to start from the basic, like education system. Have you got these topics in the when I go to for the climate reality project as a mentor, I go abroad, and then we discuss with the other mentors there who are coming from and we discuss about the education. There are a number of countries where in the education system they have introduced these topics.
Okay.
Have we done it? We have not. At least I haven't seen it. So I cannot not carpet statement, but definitely I don't find anywhere when I speak to the school and college students, they say, sir, it is not there. We do not have this part of our syllabus. People like you who come and talk to us, or number of guest speakers, they talk. So now is the time. You said, Krishna, rightly, that now is because the time schedule ahead is very short. We talk about 2025, we talk about 2030 and 2050. I don't know what is beyond that. But then if this is their life, those who are 10-year-old today or the 20 years old today, they have got another, this prime age is going to come now. And if they are not told what is there lying in front of you,
Hmm.
I think we are criminals. We are doing injustice to them. So this is a time now to spread the awareness. Whenever we go there, whenever we get opportunity, through your accreditation, when you have people who are there, who go there, they should be able to speak. Maybe for 10 minutes. We are not even, nobody's got a time these days. But even if you speak for 10 minutes with them, over a cup of coffee or whatever, the formal, informal session, I personally feel time has come to, it's already gone. But still it is now, we should speak. We should spread the awareness. Devdar sir, your point of view.
Yeah, in fact, when I was talking about years, 2050, 2070, which is not our age, it is their age. So we have to be aware what is going to be their future. And I'm not totally pessimistic, but in fact, I've seen some efforts including the climate and environment as a subject in the syllabus of the schools and colleges. Especially the latest, if you see the education policy which has been announced, I've seen encouraging, steps in that that they are introducing. It's not like only EVS. Earlier it's called EVS, but now it is going to be climate and working closely with such efforts. I personally feel. Responding to your earlier question, Krishna ji, that first thing what we need to do is start from ourselves, for oneself. We should aim at reducing our footprint by whatever means that we can do. Wherever we can, go by a scooter, or we should walk. Wherever we can go by our own car, we should go by public transport, something like that, similar. Secondly, we should change our food habits, because, the food is the major subject. And the base of all climate change parameters you see is the population. And the major argument put up by India so far is per capita emissions, which is a very, it's an argument, okay, for argument's sake, but it is a very weak argument, because climate doesn't know per capita. It knows whatever comes in the climate. So we have to stop acting like that, and we have to everybody has to do their own bit. Change from non-vegetarian to vegetarianism, because if you see the footprint of the meat, production, it's very high. And if you cut down on that, definitely the whole line of emissions will reduce. The second part is reduce the wastage of whatever that you do, like resources, food or paper or whatever you use, electricity. You should stop. You will reduce that and try to recycle as much as one can, or treat your own waste at home, generate compost, do small gardening, whatever you can afford to your abilities. So these are at the individual levels. Then in the business also, probably you can think about doing low carbon, encouraging low carbon activities, and in your own business. For example, there is a very interesting subject of Bitcoin, which is a very debated topic, cryptocurrency. And I was very interesting article I have seen that the carbon emissions from a Bitcoin are huge. Okay. And you would have heard that Elon Musk decided to cancel his thrust Bitcoins because of the carbon footprint, that heavy carbon footprint. So now the thrust is on developing an cryptocurrency which is low emission. So this is a very, very interesting example how one can think about making their own bit.
Correct. So it's more of one being aware of their own actions. So if we start auditing our own selves, if we start looking at what we are doing, and whether we are walking down or we are using a vehicle, that itself would make a huge difference probably to begin with. And of course, the concept of reducing waste, recycling everything, that definitely needs to set in for all of us. So I think we have breached a lot of available resources, and right now is the time for us to be aware and consciously act. We do a lot of things unconsciously, like just move out of the house and call a rickshaw and go ahead, without even thinking whether I'm going up 1 kilometer or 3 kilometers. So I mean, that particular thought could actually set
Sometimes
the-
it is inevitable. Sometimes, the traffic is so hot that you will get, hit by a vehicle if you go by
Correct.
in some street.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
That's,
yes,
that's
but yes,
perfectly
yes.
there. But we can make some small efforts at least. It would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
With this, I would also like to invite our audience here. Would you all like to ask any questions to our eminent speakers? It has been such an interesting session, very gripping and very informative. So the participants, if you want to ask some questions, the floor is open for all of us. In the chat box, I have not seen any questions yet. But if you want to ask anybody, you can please unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay. So I guess there are no questions from the audience. So the overall session definitely has been very, very informative. And I'm sure, people will be now one step closer to being aware of how they can contribute to preventing this global warming, preventing any kind of wastage, which could actually, add on to the carbon footprint. So thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you, Colonel Dalvi. Thank you, Shri Devdhar. It has been really nice interacting with you this evening. And of course, you all added a lot of value to our celebrations of World Accreditation Day. Like, I always mention accreditation ensures that things are credible. And let us maintain that credibility at all times. Let us respect that credibility at all times. Let us do our bit to maintain that credibility at all times. Thank you so much. And we'll again look forward to having some more events with you, maybe a little longer talks, knowing a little more about the Paris Agreement, knowing a little more about, what more can we do about the SDGs, what, if we can prepare some roadmaps with different kinds of people, with different people in the, at different age, in different age groups. If we can do that, we'll definitely take it on. Thank you so much. And with this, we come to an end of our celebration of World Accreditation Day today. Please join us again tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. This is a series that will go on for the next few days. So we will be touching on every new topic in each of our session. And all of you are now aware that our speakers are the best in the industry with a high level of information to be shared with us. So thank you so much, and wish you all a very good evening ahead. Thank you, sir. With this, we close the session for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, organizers. Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
It was a wonderful, you people have given me an opportunity to share my views.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Nice meeting you, Devdhar Saab. Nice
Thank
meeting
you. And please convey my thanks to Anil Johri Saab. Thank you.
Sure, I'll do that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.